Earlier this month, I wrote a piece in The Intercept, as well as several radars on here, arguing about how and why Democrats are losing working class voters of all races while gaining support among highly educated voters. Congressman Khanna shares some of this sentiment and called on Democrats to, quote, embrace a deep patriotism that celebrates our goodness, the genius of our principles and institutions, and our promise while recognizing our failings. Deputy Whip for the Congressional Progressive Caucus, Congressman Khanna, joins us now to discuss how Democrats can rally support ahead of the midterms and the status of the Build Back Better Act. Congressman Khanna, welcome to Rising.
Thank you, Ryan. I thought it was a terrific piece.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Not everybody agreed, but of course we're happy to have on somebody who did agree. But so you took some flack on Twitter for your post from some of the more hardcore left who said who took issue with the idea of celebrating what is colloquially referred to as American exceptionalism. And so what's your response to the criticism that came from that post?
Well, first of all, I'm sorry for causing you trouble for a good piece.
That didn't cause me any trouble.
But let me say this: most people, whether they're white, black, Latino, Asian, if you talk to them, they're proud of being American. They are proud of our country. Now, there are two different views of American exceptionalism. One is sort of a blind patriotism, where basically you say, okay, everything America has done is great and the greatest in the world. That's not what I'm advocating. The other is a honest and reflective patriotism, the type that Frederick Douglass articulated in Composite Nation in 1869, where he says what makes America exceptional is that we're an immigrant nation, that we will aspire to be the first multiracial, multi-ethnic democracy in this world, and that we ought to celebrate that aspiration and those ideals. So I see no reason why we shouldn't have that aspirational vision of America and appeal to people's sense that they love this country and they want this country to do well.
Well, and especially because, Republicans and the right, I think, seem to be doing a really good job of using a backlash against a variety of things. I don't know, what do you want to call it? Critical race theory, the excesses of social justice wokeism, whatever you want to term it. And the idea that a kind of very progressive leftism is teaching it in schools and is kind of forcing everyone to adopt I think what you were just describing, a sort of reflexive or knee-jerk anti-Americanism or a divisiveness on issues like race and gender, and Republicans are winning by pushing back against that. How does the Democratic Party answer that, looking at things like what happened in Virginia with the Youngkin win, that kind of stuff?
We have to be clear about a few things. We have to be clear that parents should have a role in their kids' education, that we should teach people to be proud of growing up in America and the things that we've done well. But we have to understand the battle lines in this country. The Republicans are arguing from a place of identity of what America is. You can't beat that by saying we're going to give you childcare. We need our vision of what we believe America is and why we're proud of where we want to take America. And so we shouldn't just cede the arguments over patriotism and identity and what it means to be an American to the Republicans. That stuff stirs people's souls and evokes passion, and you're not going to beat that simply with an economic agenda.
Yeah. Going back to these young voters, I definitely think that cancel culture and the whole kind of cultural divide debate is something that weighs on people. But, for younger voters, college affordability, climate, immigration policy reform, these are just some of the issues that are really important to those young progressive voters. And they're pleading for further investments from the administration, according to CNN. So Biden, who campaigned on student loan cancellation, climate action, and criminal justice, has come up short on delivering many of these issues for the young Bernie supporters that turned out in high volume for Biden in 2020, helping put him in office. So do you see that there's really what gives? I mean, why hasn't the administration been more focused on tackling these things that have delivered him those votes from those young voters?
They should be. And as you know, Ryan knows, I've been a defender of the administration of Build Back Better and even with the bipartisan infrastructure bill. But there is no reason that the president shouldn't sign something to forgive student loan debt in this country. I mean, I've said up to 50,000, but at least do something of 10, 15, 20,000 so that you are addressing this huge burden of the next generation that can't buy a house. In some cases, they don't want to have kids. They're saddled with this debt. Address that and take some bold actions, further actions on climate. I completely agree that this is a low-hanging fruit. The president ought to do it.
And Congressman, one of the arguments that I made in the piece was that, you know, if you go back to 2016 and you focus on this kind of race versus class debate that we've been having for the last 5 years, and then you think about the Virginia election and you see that it was so heavily focused on culture war issues, critical race theory, that, you know, Loudoun County, there was the bathroom fight that went on, and you would go back to 2016 and say, okay, well, this suggests to me that of the race versus class argument, the race side, you know, has the stronger argument, but that at the same time, you see that over those last 5 years, you know, workers of color have been gravitating more toward Republicans, and so then you're back to square one. You say, well, maybe it was more class. And one way I argued that you could perhaps square this is that the culture war argument is actually taking place in the context of class. And around the world, you're seeing parties separate along education lines. So it's not just the United States where you're seeing this, but Europe and elsewhere, you're seeing the center-left parties increasingly becoming the parties of college people with college degrees, and particularly with post-college degrees, and that creates this cultural gap between the two parties that then expresses itself through these culture war totems that, you know, that are kind of alternating. You know, in Virginia it might be critical race, there might be something else another time. Is that analysis something that people within the Democratic Party are starting to look at, or is it more, you know, we just need to turn out more voters, and we need to, you know, make sure we extend the child tax credit, and, you know, continue doing what we're doing, but do it better?
I thought your piece made a very important point of the educational divide between those of us who have gone to college, some of us like me who've had a fabulous education, but privileged to have an education at some of the most elite universities, and those who haven't gone to college. And the central point is, just because you've gone to college or an Ivy League institution doesn't mean you should look down on people who haven't, or think you're smarter than them, or think you know more than them. The collective wisdom of the American people is more. And when you look at people who haven't had these fancy degrees, they tend to care deeply about community. They tend to care deeply about family. They tend to want their community safe with law enforcement. They tend to be patriotic. Doesn't mean that they don't understand that race is an issue. Doesn't mean that they think that America has had sort of a whitewashed history, but we have to speak where they're at and in language that they can relate to. And we have to have a aspirational vision. And that to me was what I took away from your point. If there was one takeaway, it was have a little humility if you've gotten a fancy degree.
But are you alone in thinking that, or do you think that, is this a growing sentiment? Like, are Democrats recognizing the existential danger that this lack of humility represents?
I think there is an increasing, at least, conversation around it. The challenge is to say, if you believe this, doesn't mean that you don't speak about the issues of race or the issues of gender. It is that you have this conversation with people in ways that doesn't come from moral judgment or come from saying, I'm more enlightened, I'm more moral, I'm more superior in my way of thinking than you are. I mean, and that, I think, is getting a way of communicating that people are talking about this openly, and how we're effective in doing that.
Congressman, we really appreciate you being with us today to talk about these issues.
I appreciate it, and I do think everyone should read Ryan's piece, whether you agree with it or not. No, I mean, really, I mean, it's a real important conversation to have.
All right, thank you for that, and everyone go check out. We'll give Ryan more free advertising on this
There
show. And tomorrow on Rising, we have another great show planned for you all on almost Thanksgiving Day.
Katie Halper joins us to discuss new revelations about Andrew Cuomo, plus Brianna Joy Gray is with us.
And be sure to like, share, and subscribe so that you never miss one of our videos. And we will see you guys tomorrow.
See you
Bye-bye.
then.